Hey guys, tonight we travel far. So far that nothing you've ever known has happened yet. You drift through a world without mammals, without birds, without trees, without the color green. What you'll see is not meant for human eyes. You wouldn't last 5 seconds here, but luckily, you're just a ghost. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know where you're listening from and what time it is where you are. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The crust below you is jagged, raw, and volcanic, stitched together in vast, chaotic plates that grind and stretch and pull against one another. But the surface, the skin of this ancient Earth, wears a different shape than the one you've memorized on maps. There is no Asia, no Africa, no Antarctica. Instead, a single, hulking landmass rests near the equator, an ancient supercontinent known as Nuna, or perhaps Columbia, depending on the timeline. The names don't matter, not really, not here. What matters is the shape, the slow breath of the planet as it begins to dream itself into what it will become. You float above this early Earth like a weightless shadow. Below, the continent is bare, colorless. No grass, no flowers, no forest to soften its edges. Just naked stone, burnt and wind-carved, with ridges like old scars. Lava fields sprawl like spilled ink. Riverbeds twist dry, waiting for water that may not come for centuries. The oceans, too, are different. They do not shimmer blue. They are dark, murky, almost metallic. Suspended within them is iron, lots of it, giving the water a reddish-brown hue. These are iron oceans, saturated with dissolved minerals, churning beneath a sky that holds no comfort. The air wraps the planet in a different kind of breath. You feel it as a soft resistance. It is thin, alien. There's barely any oxygen. Instead, it is filled with methane, carbon dioxide, ammonia, gases that would make a human choke in seconds. And yet, this is normal here. This is home to early life. You listen, though there is no sound. No birdsong, no insects, no rustling leaves. Only the distant rumble of tectonic pressure, the occasional crack of lava cooling into basalt, and the slow, chemical sigh of the ocean meeting air. And above it all, the sky. It isn't blue. It pulses with haze, amber and gray, tinged with the subtle sulfuric hues of endless volcanic breath. Clouds gather not in familiar cotton shapes, but in wide, flat sheets. Lightning dances in the distance with no thunder to follow, as if the planet is dreaming in sparks. But the most striking thing is how fast the day passes. The Earth spins more quickly than the one you know. A full rotation takes just a little over 18 hours. The sun rises and sets in a rush, shadows stretching and snapping back like time-lapse ghosts. Night falls quickly, blanketing the surface in darkness that is not entirely still. There are no stars visible through the thick atmosphere, only a bright, looming presence. The moon, much closer than it is today. You see it hanging low, large as a god in the sky, tugging the tides with immense strength. Its pull churns the iron oceans into tides that reach far inland, scouring the coastline with every pass. The moon orbits faster too, still retreating from the Earth, but not yet far. Back then, it looked 3 times larger than it does now, and its glow was a nightly performance no creature could witness, because no creature with eyes yet walked the land. Yet life exists. You can feel it. Beneath tidal shallows and inside warm, rocky pools, microbial life clings to surfaces, feeding on the energy of the Earth. These are not animals, not even plants. They are ancient ancestors, cyanobacteria, tiny architects of what's to come. They inhale carbon dioxide and exhale something strange, something new to this atmosphere: oxygen. That oxygen doesn't last long. It bonds immediately with iron in the ocean, forming rust that settles on the sea floor. For millions of years, oxygen will vanish as soon as it appears, hidden away in the red sediment of the deep. But the process has begun. Earth is shifting, and so you float, weightless and unseen, above a planet in its adolescence. The surface still rides with geological heat. Volcanoes spit ash into skies already thick with gas. Lightning lashes the horizon. Rivers occasionally fill with sulfur-rich rain, carving canyons through young stone. And at the edges of the supercontinent, where crust meets sea, land tears and fractures, whispering promises of future continents. You hover near one such fracture, a rift where new ocean crust is forming. Magma wells up in the gap, hardens into basalt, and pushes the land slowly apart. It is tectonics in its infancy, yet already, the seeds of continental drift are at work. You feel the pressure building in silence, a story written so slowly that no one species could ever read it in a lifetime. And there's a mood here, not just the visuals, but something deeper. A silence so complete it hums. A stillness layered with tension. This is not the peace of a quiet meadow or a sleeping forest. It is the peace before change. The kind of silence that belongs to the edge of something monumental. 1 billion years ago, Earth looked like this. Raw, molten in places, iron-stained in others, whispering toward complexity. No eyes watched the sky. No hearts beat on the land. But already, something ancient was watching from within. Carbon, heat, pressure, and time. The first ingredients of story. You feel it before you see it. An invisible ripple in the ocean's edge, the faint exhale of something alive. It doesn't speak. It doesn't move much. And yet, this soft, unseen breath is about to change the planet forever. Somewhere in the shallows of a coastal lagoon, just beneath the coppery surface, something ancient is busy at work. Tiny organisms, barely a few microns wide, pulse with energy pulled directly from sunlight. They are cyanobacteria, the planet's first real alchemists, quietly transforming light, water, and carbon into something almost no one needs yet: oxygen. This isn't the kind of life you're used to. There are no fins, no claws, no leaves. Nothing hunts or flees. These microbes live like stillness itself, clumped together in quiet mats, stacking layer upon layer with each passing day, forming sticky green films on rocks and sediment. But inside, they are lightning. Inside, they are performing the first act of planetary renovation. You drift closer into their microscopic cities. There is no central plan here, just patterns that emerge over time. Light hits their delicate pigments. Electrons spark, water splits, and the waste product, oxygen, bubbles into the surrounding water. Useless for now. Unwanted. Even dangerous. Because this new oxygen is toxic to the life forms that dominate the Earth's oceans at this time. Most microbes live anaerobically, thriving in low oxygen or no oxygen environments. To them, oxygen is a silent killer. So this release, this innocent byproduct of photosynthesis, is the beginning of an extinction event so slow, it won't even have a name for 1 billion years. But the cyanobacteria do not stop. You hover above their microbial mats, watching the layers build upward like ancient paper. Some colonies survive the tides. Others thrive in warm shallows where sunlight is strong and the water churns just enough to keep them supplied with nutrients. They form stromatolites, living rock structures that grow like wrinkles in time, layered domes of stone and life, rising slowly from tidal flats and shorelines. The rhythm is hypnotic. Every day, they take in light and push out oxygen. Every night, they wait, suspended in darkness. It's slow, it's quiet, it's miraculous. And slowly, the ocean begins to change. The dissolved iron in the seawater, so abundant for hundreds of millions of years, starts reacting with this new oxygen. The result is iron oxide, rust. Billions of tiny chemical reactions take place beneath the surface as the ocean literally rusts from the inside out. The red particles drift downward, settling into layered sediments that will one day become banded iron formations, striped geological fossils of this transformation, locked into the rock for all time. You sink into those layers for a moment. Red, gray, oxygen, then none. A tide of breath, frozen into stone. These stripes are the first heartbeat of atmosphere. The planet's lungs, beginning to open. And still, No one is watching. No one is listening. Life has no eyes, no ears, no memory yet. But the sky is beginning to notice. You rise into the air, through a hazy atmosphere thick with volcanic gases. Methane still dominates, trapping heat and painting the sky with strange hues: orange, copper, sometimes green in the right light. But oxygen, ever so slowly, begins to tip the balance. And with it comes a profound shift. The sky is on the verge of turning blue. Not today, not this million-year span. But the seeds are here. The more oxygen enters the air, the more ultraviolet light gets filtered, the more scattering happens. Blue, that familiar color, is waiting in the wings. You drift over shallow seas where cyanobacteria have taken hold. Some live in mats. Others float freely in the water, multiplying with quiet confidence. They are the architects of everything to come. Without them, no trees, no lungs, no fire, no cities. Just a still ocean beneath a sun that shines without memory. And yet, their oxygen is not a gift. It is a catastrophe. As oxygen accumulates, anaerobic organisms begin to suffer. The ones that cannot adapt die out, their lineages snuffed out invisibly in dark ocean corners. It's called the Great Oxygenation Event, a planetary revolution disguised as a breath. Slow, relentless, inevitable. You feel the tension in the planet's systems. Volcanoes still belch methane and sulfur. The crust groans with heat. The carbon cycle is unstable. The balance is delicate. If too much oxygen builds too quickly, global cooling could spiral into planetary freeze. And yet, the cyanobacteria do not stop. You glide through tidal pools at dusk. The water glows faintly in the last light of the sun. Beneath the surface, microbial mats release tiny bubbles that tickle the skin of the sea. If you could hear it, it would sound like champagne. If you could touch it, it would feel like memory. Above, clouds shift. The moon tugs the water rhythmically, and each tide carries new nutrients into the shallows. Each retreat leaves oxygen behind. Each cycle inches the planet toward breath. And then, there's a flicker of something new. In one corner of the sea, among the microbial mats, a few cells begin to change. They fold inward. They develop internal compartments. These are not full eukaryotes. Not yet, but the dance has begun. Complex life is whispering from within. But that is for later. For now, the planet breathes. It rusts. It transforms in silence. And you float above it, watching the most important atmospheric revolution in the history of Earth unfold not with fire or violence, but with breath. The sky was not always blue. You drift upward through its ancient layers, through vapors thick with sulfur and soot, through gases exhaled by 1,000 volcanoes. The air grips you, not with hands, but with weight, pressure, and strange chemical size. It is not the sky you know. It is dense, metallic, and yellowed like old parchment. The light scatters differently here. There is no blue to reveal. Instead, amber and copper dominate, coloring the world below with the palette of fire. At sunrise, the sun doesn't rise gently. It sears through the haze, a molten disk blurred by methane and carbon haze, casting no clean shadows, only blurred halos on the ground. At dusk, it sinks into a sulfuric veil, trailing streaks of blood orange and violet smog. Above the clouds, it is quiet, but not peaceful. The upper atmosphere is still raw, unfiltered, hammered by ultraviolet radiation from the sun. Without a proper ozone layer, light tears molecules apart. The air crackles invisibly with photochemical reactions, short bursts of madness that leave no sound, only altered atoms in their wake. And so, the sky remains a barrier, not a dome of comfort. The air you now drift through is dominated by methane, belched from the guts of microbial life and from the constant churn of volcanic activity. Carbon dioxide is heavy in the mix, trapping heat close to the surface. Ammonia joins in, adding its own scentless weight. There is almost no oxygen yet, just whispers of it in the wrong places, occasionally formed by sunlight splitting water vapor, or from the slow, tireless work of those early cyanobacteria down below. This atmosphere is alien, yet somehow alive. You pass through veils of airborne particles, dust and ash suspended in slow turbulence, remnants of volcanic eruptions that pockmark the surface like burns on skin. These particles drift for months, sometimes years, diffusing sunlight and staining the world in tones of bronze. The colors are not soft. They are raw. And yet, there is beauty here. When the sky clears momentarily, when the volcanic breath pauses, sunlight filters through just enough to paint the horizon with ghost light. It is not the blue of an afternoon sky. It is the glow of alchemy, the light of a planet not yet finished with its dreaming. You drift across the terminator, the line where day turns into night, and watch as the sky flips its palette. On one side, the sky glows with a chemical bruise of ochre and plum. On the other, darkness takes over, but not blackness. The night sky here is dim, obscured. There are no stars visible, only a thick velvet of dark gases. The moon, still close, casts an eerie luminescence over the land, but it is filtered through vapor and cloud. It becomes a smudge, a haunting silver blur. But the sky is changing. You feel it, not as sound, but as shift. Every day, every microbial breath, every oxidation reaction at the ocean's edge contributes to a quiet revolution. Oxygen is forming. Not much, just a trace, but enough to begin tugging at the balance. Oxygen, as it accumulates, reacts not just with iron in the ocean, but also with gases in the air. Methane, once dominant, begins to break down. Carbon dioxide becomes more balanced. The mix begins to tip. The colors begin to shift, subtly, over millions of years. From mustard to gold, from copper to pale yellow. And somewhere, unseen by any creature with eyes, the first sky begins to blue. It doesn't happen all at once. At first, it's just a slight shift and scattering. A faint blueness at zenith when the haze thins, visible only to a ghost like you, drifting invisibly above the world. A preview of a future color. You wonder, if color had memory, would the sky mourn its golden youth? Or would it exhale in relief when blue finally arrives? You pass through a thunderstorm now, primordial, electric, and strange. Thunder cracks without delay, because the lightning is right there. Clouds stretch wider than mountain ranges, charged with static and motion. These storms brew chemical cocktails, lightning catalyzing reactions in the sky and on the surface. Some scientists believe these flashes once helped create amino acids, the precursors to life. Even now, they continue to stir the pot. Each lightning bolt is a painter, each thunderclap, a chapter. You drift through the static, feeling how atmosphere is more than sky. It is a process. And even though oxygen is still scarce, it's gaining ground. Every additional atom of O2 added to the mix changes how the atmosphere filters sunlight. The more oxygen, the more ozone. The more ozone, the better protection from ultraviolet light. And eventually, the more blue the sky will appear. But that blue is not for now. For now, the Earth is still cloaked in its ancient mask. And yet, change is coming. You float above mountain ridges formed by lava, now eroded into sharp teeth by acidic rain. You pass over empty valleys carved by long-forgotten rivers. These landscapes remember the color of the sky, even if no eye has ever seen it. They carry the rust, the sulfur, the ash in their bones. And in that rust lies a prophecy. When the last of the iron in the oceans is used up, when it can no longer absorb the cyanobacterious oxygen, the balance will shift. Oxygen will begin to fill the air, unstoppable, transformative. The skies will pale. The clouds will whiten. And someday, somewhere, something will look up and see the color blue for the very first time. But that is millions of years away. For now, you float through the golden air, beneath the glow of a younger sun and the pull of a nearer moon, above a world exhaling its way toward breath. Beneath the sky's amber haze, beneath the young supercontinent's jagged skin, beneath even the first microbial stirrings and tidipools, you enter the sea. Not the sea you know. This is a rusted ocean, thick with dissolved iron, colored not in sapphire blues or glacial greens, but in tones of shadowed blood and ancient bronze. It is warm, not tropical warm, but primordial warm. heated by a restless earth below and a sun that shines brighter than before. You drift through the water like a thought, unbound by pressure, untouched by time. Around you, particles of iron swirl, invisible to any eye, waiting to bind with something new: oxygen. You watch as oxygen bubbles from the shorelines, creeping into the sea in soft exhales from cyanobacteria. When it finds the iron, it reacts in an instant. One molecule meets another. A chemical handshake. Rust is born. Tiny flakes of iron oxide begin to settle, slowly, constantly, blanketing the sea floor in fine, red dust. You sink with them, down and down, until the light disappears. The water thickens. The silence becomes a pressure, the kind that presses memory into stone. Here, on the ocean's bottom, entire epic sleep. Banded iron formations begin to layer. Red for when oxygen is abundant, gray for when it is not. Like the rings of ancient trees, these stripes will one day tell the story of Earth's breath, of its first atmosphere flickering into life and then vanishing again. You float through the sediment, through millions of years' worth of iron snowfall. This is Earth's slow heartbeat, hidden beneath crushing weight and absolute silence. A billion years ago, the sea was a cathedral of chemistry, a temple with no priest, no witness, except you. Life here is different. Tiny anaerobic microbes drift in the murk, invisible but numerous beyond comprehension. They ferment, they split molecules, they feed on sulfur, iron, and methane. They live in shadows and thrive in stillness. Most of them will not survive the oxygen that is coming. But for now, they are the dominant life on Earth. They do not know fear. They do not know change. They simply exist. And above them, on the ocean's surface, oxygen is starting to rise faster than the iron can absorb. The oceans begin to saturate, unable to hide this new element. Once the iron is gone, oxygen will start to fill the seas themselves. And that will change everything. You move now with the currents, along the ancient ocean floor. Hydrothermal vents line the mid-ocean ridges like glowing gashes, spewing mineral-rich water into the deep. Around them, microbial life clings to rock, feeding on heat and chemistry. These are black smokers, the lungs of the ocean, exhaling sulfides into the dark. Even here, at the bottom of the world, the rusted story continues. As oxygen begins to intrude, these vent-dwelling microbes adapt or vanish. Some evolve new enzymes, new protections. Some hide deeper in the crust. Others simply disappear. Another silent extinction, unnoticed, undocumented, except in the fossilized chemistry of the rocks. You drift beside one such vent, watching as iron sulfide crystals form like alien flowers on the stone. They shimmer, they grow, then collapse under their own weight. Nearby, microbes form fragile colonies, looping into filaments and mats, holding fast against the boiling current. It's strange how much life can thrive in complete darkness, how much life does not need light at all. And yet, above, sunlight still matters. It pierces the shallows. It powers the cyanobacteria. It draws the boundaries between light-loving and light-avoiding life. It pushes oxygen into the water, which falls like a slow, invisible rain. Soon, the upper ocean will become hostile to the anaerobes. Entire microbial nations will vanish. The sea will change color, not overnight, but gradually. The red will drain away. The iron will be gone, and the water will begin to clear. You hover mid-depth now, between light and dark, between past and future. Above you, a world that has not yet seen a fish, not yet heard a wave crash on forested shores. Below you, the weight of iron, locking away oxygen's early dreams in stone. And in this in-between place, life evolves. A few microbes begin to innovate, folding membranes inward, forming internal structures. They begin storing information, shielding enzymes, preparing for complexity. These are precursors to the eukaryotic cell. They're still centuries from becoming anything with a nucleus, but the shift has begun. These changes don't announce themselves with drama. They happen quietly, molecule by molecule, chance mutation by chance success. Most fail. Some persist. Over time, The ones that adapt to rising oxygen gain an advantage. You drift forward in time, pulled by currents that carry not just water, but history. With each million-year pass, the oceans become less toxic, less metallic. Iron oxide continues to fall, but now in thinner layers. Soon, the seas will begin to turn green with algae, blue with clarity, white with calcium. But before that, they were this: red, warm, strange. You rise slowly now, returning toward the surface, letting the light touch you again. And in the shallow zones, you see them, stromatolites, growing upward still, unfazed, undeterred. Around them, oxygen gathers, trying to escape into the air, and the last iron molecules in the water rush to meet it. You feel it, the end of one era and the beginning of another. The age of iron oceans is closing. The age of air is coming. And all of it, every transformation, has been born in silence, beneath the waves, in a world of rust and time. Above the ancient waves, where iron-stained waters shimmer beneath a sun filtered through volcanic haze, the land begins to stir. Not with footsteps, not with breath, but with rising stone. You drift over the jagged coastline of 1 billion years ago, where land is not yet a stable stage, but a molten thought trying to become solid. The Earth's crust here is thin, restless, cracking beneath its own heat and pressure. Deep below, mantle plumes, columns of scorching rock rising from the Earth's interior, begin to press upward. They are slow, massive, unstoppable. What they build is land. You pass over a volcanic arc, where lava has broken through, cooled, and built upon itself over countless eruptions. There are no continents as you know them, only fragments, island arcs, newborn cratons, and proto-continents fusing like puzzle pieces scattered across a molten table. The surface is black and sharp, cooled basalt laid down like spilled ink. But it doesn't stay still. New lava pushes old lava aside. Earthquakes ripple across this crust with no warning. In some places, the land splits, cracking like dry skin, and magma seeps upward in silent fountains. In others, old land subducts, melting back into the mantle from which it came. You drift over one such subduction zone now. Two plates collide. One is heavier, waterlogged from ages beneath the sea. It bends, fractures, and dives below the other, melting into ghost light as it descends. Above, a volcanic chain rises like vertebrae in slow motion. This is Earth learning to sculpt itself. There are no mountains yet, only volcanic ridges and rising domes of stone. Some of these will one day become the cores of future continents. Others will erode into dust and vanish without record. But each one, in this moment, is the first breath of land. You hover above a ridge forming in real time. Lava fountains hiss into the sky, cooling midair and falling as obsidian rain. The ground smokes. Steam vents whistle. Rivers of fire carve paths down new slopes, only to harden hours later into fields of razor-sharp rock. There is no soil here, no moss, no life. And yet, from the sea, the first microbial mats begin to creep ashore. You see them, faint green shadows clinging to the edges of tidopools. These cyanobacteria are pioneers. They inch forward, day by day, forming biofilms across hot rock and cooling glass. They don't yet build ecosystems, but they prepare the land. By secreting acids, they begin to weather the rock. By dying, they become the first organic material to mix with minerals. And in time, what they leave behind becomes proto-soil. Not enough to grow a forest, not yet, but enough to hold promise. You pass over an inland plain, formed by ancient lava flow and now cooling under the weight of eons. Cracks form. Gases escape. Rain falls, acidic and warm, pooling in surface depressions. In one such pool, life begins to take hold. Simple, microbial, film-like, but present. This is the beginning of habitable land, although it won't truly become green for hundreds of millions of years. And still, the planet builds. You feel the slow convergence of plates beneath your ghost form. Two proto-continents drift closer over millions of years. When they meet, Stone collides with stone in a soundless, violent embrace. Mountain roots begin to form. Not peaks yet, but bulges, domes, thickened crust that will someday rise into ranges. These continental collisions are slow catastrophes, silent earthquakes that last for centuries, melting rock and lifting earth. You hover above a suture zone, the scar where two pieces of earth have fused forever. It will become the spine of a new landmass. You sense the heat beneath it still, pulsing like a buried heart. There are no tectonic maps here, no names for these places, but the process is unmistakable. The earth is assembling its bones. Cratons, the oldest, most stable parts of continents, begin to anchor these new landforms. Thick, buoyant, and ancient even now, these crustal blocks will survive billions of years. Some are already over 3 billion years old. You drift over one now. Its stone cool to the touch, its memory etched in zircon crystals older than any mountain. They remember a time when the moon was even closer, when the Earth's surface was nearly all water, when land was but an interruption in the ocean's endless blue. And now land rises, not in celebration, not in defiance, but because of heat, pressure, time, and motion. Because this planet does not sit still. Because creation is a byproduct of conflict. You float upward again, into the ash-colored sky, and look down upon the jagged mosaic below. There is no symmetry here, no Europe, no Himalayas, but there are beginnings. Hot springs bubble in crater lakes. Basalt cliffs rise and collapse. Fissures split the earth and bleed red for years. Lava deltas extend the coastline one hardened drop at a time. You watch the edge of a new landmass grow outward. Black rock meeting red sea, steam rising with every wave. And overhead, the sky stirs. Volcanic gases fill the air, sulfur dioxide, methane, carbon monoxide. The clouds are heavy, brooding. Rain falls in bursts, acidic, erosive, but vital. Each drop carves, softens, nourishes the rock below. In time, this weathering will create landscapes, valleys, canyons, eventually even soil. But for now, the land is raw, sharp, silent, smoking, and yet it holds everything. Every mountain range that will rise, every riverbed that will one day carry silt to the sea, every city that will someday sprawl, every footstep that will ever press into its surface, all of it still asleep in the stone. The earth spins beneath you, fast, faster than you're used to. You feel the rhythm of it, the swift rotation tugging at the edge of gravity, like a carousel with no music. The days are short, rushed, unfinished. The planet turns once every 18 hours or so, and the sun races across the sky like it's late for something. This is not just a quirk of the past, it is physics in motion. The Earth was younger then, still hot inside, still holding on to its spin from birth. The moon, not yet as distant as it will become, pulls at the tides like a mother urging a child to sleep. Each tidal tug saps just a little bit of that rotation, slows the Earth by a breath. But here, a billion years ago, the carousel still whirls. The days are fleeting. You drift through one now. The morning sun peeks through a haze of volcanic dust, casting long, distorted shadows across barren land. The light is strange, sharp at first, then quickly softens as the sun climbs. But before you can settle into the warmth, the sun begins to fall again. It's not just fast, it's restless. The plants haven't arrived yet. No forests to lean toward the light. No birds to call it dawn. No flowers to track the sun's arc. Just microbial mats drying slightly during the brief daylight, then waiting in stasis for the next. You hover over a tidal flat, where cyanobacteria stretch like sleepy skin across the shore. They sense the rhythm. Even these simple life forms, without nerves, without brains, have circadian rhythms, light-sensitive cycles that rise and fall with the day. But those cycles must adapt now to a rapid beat. More days in a year, more sunsets, more sunrises, more beginnings, more endings. Time feels condensed, and with each spin, the planet stretches itself, centrifugal force flattening it ever so slightly at the poles. You drift northward, and the curvature of the Earth feels just a little less round. The equator bulges subtly, as though the planet is breathing too quickly and can't quite hold its shape. You rise into the upper atmosphere, into the thin veil of gases that race westward as the Earth spins beneath. The clouds streak across the sky like paint dragged too quickly. Wind patterns are faster, more chaotic. Storms are frequent. Lightning dances over land and sea, connecting nothing to nothing in brilliant silence. And yet, this fast-spinning world has rhythm. The tides obey the moon's nearness. With it closer than ever, tides crash farther inland, sweeping nutrients and life into new corners. Twice a day, the sea lunges onto land, then retreats. Twice a day, the Earth exhales and inhales its coastal breath. These tides are more than ocean motions. They are planetary timekeepers. Even now, a billion years ago, the Earth begins to settle into routines, circadian cycles, tidal rhythms, seasonal changes, all dictated by rotation and tilt. The tilt is there, about 23 degrees, giving the Earth its seasons, even if no one yet watches a tree change color or a leaf fall. The rotation, though, is the dominant drumbeat, and it is gradually, imperceptibly, slowing. You feel it as a tension in the crust. Every time the moon pulls the ocean, it steals a little angular momentum. Every time the Earth resists that pull, it pays a price in speed. It's a trade, an ancient agreement written into gravity itself. This is why the moon is leaving. You rise until the planet curves beneath you like an ancient eye. The moon hangs in the sky, enormous, majestic, maybe 3 times bigger than it appears today. Its surface glows softly, scarred by impact, silent as ever. It circles faster, closer. Its gravity grips the oceans with a firmness the modern world has forgotten. In this moment, you understand. Every day on Earth, every hour, every tide, is a product of a slow cosmic negotiation. The Earth wants to spin. The moon wants to pull. The result is time, carved into 18-hour slices. And yet, in this rapid world, life adapts. The cyanobacteria still release oxygen. The microbial colonies still bloom in sunlight and rest in shade. The thermal vents still release mineral-rich steam. Life finds no fault in the shortness of a day, but the implications stretch far. Faster spins mean stronger winds, more heat retention, shorter cooling cycles. Weather changes faster. Ocean temperatures shift more rapidly. Evolution, though slow, is shaped subtly by the tempo of the planet. You pass over a volcanic plain, where lava cools faster than expected. The short nights allow less time for thermal loss. Over time, these small changes shape climate zones, erosion patterns, the spread of shallow seas. And you wonder, quietly, what would have happened if the Earth had always spun slowly? Would life have evolved the same? Would rhythm and rest still exist? You circle the globe in less than a day, watching the light change as the world turns. You see continents drift by, shrouded in mist. You watch storms form and die within a single day. You feel the planet spin not as speed, but as urgency. And below, in the rock, the rhythm is recorded. Coral reefs won't arrive for hundreds of millions of years, but when they do, their growth rings will preserve the number of days in each year. Fossils will carry time in their bones, and future scientists will read those rings and whisper, "The Earth spun faster once." But you already know. You felt it in your ribs, or what used to be ribs, in the wind, in the sky, in the ocean tides crashing like a metronome. A billion years ago, the day was short, but the future was long. The moon is closer. You feel it before you see it. Its pull on the ocean, its silent sway over the tides, its grip on the rhythm of the Earth. You drift through twilight, and there it is, rising above the horizon like a god of stone. It is immense, 3 times larger in the sky than you remember, and far more luminous, its face scarred and cratered, glowing not with warmth, but with ancient indifference. It stares down at the Earth it helped shape, not with emotion, but with gravity. You float in its light, and the tides beneath you swell. Each time the moon circles the Earth, it pulls at the oceans, drawing them toward it in a massive, slow-motion wave. On this ancient Earth, the tides are not quiet lappings at the shore. They are movements of continents, floods that stretch inland for miles before retreating again. 2 tides a day, powered by the moon's closeness, carve the shoreline with a patience only geology understands. You watch one tide roll in now. Thick with rust-colored water, it rushes across microbial mats, over freshly cooled lava, around volcanic outcrops. When it recedes, it leaves behind pools rich in life and chemistry. These tidal zones are laboratories, testing grounds for evolution. Where the sea meets land, life experiments. The moon makes that possible. It tugs the water like a tired parent trying to wake a stubborn child. Relentless, unforgiving, beautiful. And with every pull, every tide, every slight elongation of the Earth's crust, it takes something in return, momentum. You drift above the Earth and feel the exchange in silence. The moon pulls on the planet's rotation, creating friction in the ocean bulges. The Earth slows, just a little, just enough. And in response, the moon drifts away. About 3.8 centimeters every year, a pace so slow no creature could feel it. But across billions of years, the distance adds up. Once, the moon was born from Earth's own body, ripped from it in a cataclysmic collision. Back then, it hovered much closer, casting tides hundreds of feet high and lighting up the sky like a second sun. Now, a billion years ago, it's already begun its slow retreat, but it is still close enough to shape everything. You rise above the clouds now, where the atmosphere thins and the full scale of the moon becomes visible. Its disk is massive. Shadows from its craters are visible with your ghostly eyes. It doesn't just reflect light, it commands it. Night on Earth is never fully dark. The moon's brightness floods the planet in silver. Even in the absence of sunlight, even through the haze of methane and sulfur, the moon asserts itself. Every living thing, every colony of cyanobacteria, every early microbial drift senses its presence. It's not just gravitational. It's ritual. Tides, cycles, light and dark. The moon introduces a second rhythm, a secondary pulse overlaid upon the Earth's spin. As the days spin fast, the moon layers in a slower beat, one that guides the future arrival of mating patterns, migrations, fertility, sleep. You descend now over an ancient bay. The tide is out, and vast mudflats are exposed, steaming in the thin sunlight. The ground is painted with ripple marks, sculpted by the moon. Pools of water linger in shallow depressions, rich with nutrients. Cyanobacteria flourish here. Oxygen gathers invisibly in the surface tension. And then, like breath returning, the tide begins to rise again. Over weeks, over months, the moon's phases would already exist, though no creature watches its waxing and waning. The idea of months, of time divided by light and shadow, is forming here, not consciously, not in any mind, but in the movement of water and rock and light. And in its pull, the moon stretches the crust. You float over mid-ocean ridges, where the moon's constant tug helps fuel tectonic motion. The flexing of the Earth's outer skin generates heat, drives convection in the mantle, and nudges tectonic plates into motion. It is not the only force, but it is a constant one. Quiet, consistent, patient. Without the moon, Earth's rotation might never slow. Without the moon, tides would be smaller, less dynamic. Without the moon, evolution might never have found the shoreline. You drift into the night side of the planet now, where the moon dominates the sky. It rises high overhead, casting shadows sharper than any star ever could. And in the stillness of this billion-year-old evening, you understand why future civilizations would worship it. The moon doesn't blink. It doesn't roar. It remains. You pass close to its surface now, through its thin, dust-choked exosphere. It has no air, no weather, no wind. Its silence is total. Its surface holds every scar it has ever received. You feel the craters like memories, moments of collision frozen forever. And then, you turn back toward Earth. The planet spins below you, a wild blue and red marble wrapped in haze. The moon's light touches every inch of it. every ocean tide, every future river mouth, every mountain range still waiting to be born. This dance between planet and satellite is the oldest ritual of all. Earth and moon, locked in slow embrace, reshaping each other across time. And as you drift back toward the surface, you know, the moon is not just a rock in the sky. It is Earth's companion, choreographer, and ancient mirror. You drift low now, just above the edge of the tide, where life is layering itself into stone. The sea is pulling away, revealing a glistening plain of microbial mats, slick, green-brown, and quietly alive. They sprawl across the shallows in slow ripples, barely moving, but always building. These are stromatolites, and they are among the first great architects of the living world. You hover closer. There is no sound, no rustle of leaves or splash of fish, just the hush of shallow water withdrawing, and the faint crackle of bubbles escaping as oxygen rises, molecule by molecule, from microbial breath. Stromatolites are not a species, not even a creature in the traditional sense. They are living structures, formed by communities of cyanobacteria layered with sediment. Every day, the microbes photosynthesize, capturing sunlight, splitting water, exhaling oxygen, and every day, the wind or tide deposits a fine dusting of minerals upon them. The cyanobacteria move upward, away from the weight. And so, a new layer forms. Life escapes burial by building upward, and it never stops. You glide across the surface of one such structure. It's no taller than a child's toy, yet it has taken centuries to form. Its dome is smooth, slick, mottled in colors ranging from dull green to faint purple. Beneath the surface, inside the stone, is history. Thin, compressed stories of days and nights long vanished. Each layer a breath, each breath a miracle. And though they grow slowly, stromatolites are everywhere now. Along the shores of ancient supercontinents, in protected lagoons, inside hypersaline pools inhospitable to other life, they thrive. They cover the edges of the shallow seas like wrinkles on old skin. You float inland a few meters, where the sun hits hard and the water is scarce. Even here, stromatolites persist, surviving desiccation, surviving heat. They are patient beyond patience. And all the while, they continue their alchemical work, turning carbon dioxide and sunlight into energy, releasing oxygen into an atmosphere that still resists it. You watch as the oxygen rises. Some of it escapes into the air. Some bonds with the last of the iron in the sea. Some dissolves into water, setting the stage for future respiration. It is all small, slow, invisible. And yet, these unassuming structures are rewriting the planet. You pass through a forest of them now, except it's not a forest. It's more like a reef, except there are no fish, no coral, no predators. Just domes of life in rows, gently sculpted by tides and sun. Some are smooth, others pitted with time and erosion. Together, they make the first large-scale biosphere, a biological footprint so massive it can alter the composition of the ocean, the air, even the crust. No other life form, not even future mammals, will ever change the planet so completely. You float down between the domes, slipping into the water between them. Inside the microbial mats, life is bustling, quietly, chemically. Cyanobacteria in the light-rich top layers, other bacteria in the darker depths. A complex society without hierarchy. They trade molecules, recycle waste, form miniature ecosystems long before anyone invents the word ecosystem. Here, in this silence, life is both simple and advanced. Simple in form, advanced in consequence. You drift deeper into the structure. Inside, the layers are delicate, like stacked tissue paper pressed beneath water. Some sections are more mineral than life now, traces of ancient activity fossilized into stone. Others still shimmer with microbial motion. The stromatolite breathes, not with lungs, not with rhythm, but with chemical urgency. It captures sunlight, stores energy, releases gases, all without moving, all without thinking. And somehow, through this stillness, it becomes powerful. You rise again, above the field. Shadows shift across the domes as the moon pulls the tide back in. Water laps gently at their surfaces, depositing new minerals, feeding the microbes, resetting the cycle. You watch the same patterns play out across coastlines hundreds of miles apart. A planetary ritual, performed in unison by unseen hands. Stromatolites are not rare in this time. They are the dominant landscape feature along many coasts, their population numbers unimaginable. They build over centuries, then collapse, then rebuild. Their remnants fossilize, layering into the geologic record, storing the oxygen they once released, storing the memory of their own existence. One day, they will fade. More advanced life will outcompete them, overgrow them, consume them. But not now. Now, they rule the earth in quiet dominion. You glide westward, over shallow inland seas and braided river deltas, all dotted with stromatolite formations. The planet hums beneath you, the crust warm, the oceans rust-tinged, the atmosphere gently shifting in composition day by day. And through it all, the stromatolites breathe. You realize then, they are the lungs of the ancient world. They exhale the sky. They ride oxygen into the air like a ghost riding on glass. Without them, there would be no future forests, no engines, no lungs, no fires. Without them, no creatures will ever lift their heads to see the moon and know they're alive. You drift above the tide once more. The water closes over the domes, silencing them for the night. But tomorrow, they will build again, and again, and again, until the world has changed. Fire below the crust. You drift now into the Earth's interior mood, where the land is still young and the mantle simmers with restless heat. Beneath the surface, beneath the microbial domes and rusted seas, lies the molten engine that shapes continents, builds volcanoes, and redraws the face of the planet, over and over and over. It is not quiet here. You feel it as a deep vibration, a kind of planetary breath that comes not from lungs, but from pressure and melt, from convection and chemical imbalance. The mantle moves like soup in a simmering pot, hot rock rising, cool rock sinking, over cycles that last millions of years. You hover through this slow, searing ballet. Plumes of magma rise like ghostly trees, punching through the base of the lithosphere, spreading their heat outward. They do not shout. They glow. Above these rising plumes, the crust bends upward. Tectonic plates crack open like overcooked bread, and volcanoes form, spitting fire, ash, and gas into the air. You drift up through one now, a growing cone of basaltic rock, trembling as it forms. Its crater belches sulfur and carbon dioxide. Lava leaks down its flanks in thick, deliberate flows. Every eruption adds another layer. Every layer becomes a future continent's spine. You rise into the plume of ash. It is dark, dense, and electric. Lightning dances through the volcanic cloud, a natural reaction to the charged particles within. You feel the static, the dry crackle of raw atmosphere, and then you see it, light filtering through the column like stained glass. A holy storm, born of stone. This is one of Earth's first continual sculptors. Volcanoes are not just violent accidents. They are delivery systems, constantly cycling material from deep within the Earth to its surface. They bring nutrients, gases, metals, things needed for chemistry, for life, for atmosphere. And in this ancient time, they are everywhere. You drift eastward now, along a volcanic arc, where island after island is born in flame. These islands are temporary. Some will be submerged. Some will erode. A few will remain and anchor future continents. Their surfaces are raw, cooled lava, obsidian plains, rivers of still steaming stone. No plants soften their outlines. No animals crawl their ridges. Only the elements reside here: fire, stone, gas, and time. And yet, life tries. You pass over a lava delta, where the flow has met the sea. Steam rises in thick columns, screaming into the sky. But at the edges, where water cools the rock and tide meets melt, microbial mats begin to form. Thin layers of life painting over the black. Even here, life insists. You sink now into a caldera, a vast depression left after a volcano collapses upon itself. Rainwater has begun to collect here, forming acidic lakes that bubble with volcanic gases. Inside, extremophile microbes live, feeding on sulfur, thriving where nothing else dares. The chemistry here is wild. Gases seep from the rock: carbon monoxide, methane, hydrogen sulfide. They mix with minerals in the water, reacting in silence. Every molecule, every atom, is a possibility. These places become natural test tubes, laboratories where prebiotic chemistry might have once danced into complexity. You move deeper into the crust now, following the fissures and cracks formed by tectonic strain. Pressure increases. The rock becomes plastic, moving over centuries like clay under tension. You watch as magma fills the gaps, then cools, forming dikes and sills, subsurface veins of rock that record Earth's internal memory. These features will someday be exposed by erosion, read by geologists like pages of a long-forgotten diary. But here, now, they are forming in real time. You feel the planet shiver. A deep tremor rolls through the lithosphere. It is not violent, but massive. The plates are on the move again, nudging against one another, building stress. You rise again, through the crust, back to the surface, just in time to witness the eruption. It begins with a low rumble, then a sudden explosion of ash. Lava fountains from the central vent, raining molten rock for miles. Pyroclastic flows rush down the flanks, hot clouds of gas and debris moving faster than wind, consuming everything in their path. Not that there is much to consume. No cities, no forests, just rock. Still, the land changes instantly. You hover above the devastation. Where once there was a ridge, now there is a crater. Where once a valley, now a new layer of cooled lava. Each eruption is a redrawing of the map. And as the magma cools, gases rise, escaping into the atmosphere, adding carbon dioxide, sulfur dioxide, and even trace water vapor. These gases will shape the future sky. Some will warm the planet. Others will block the sun. Some will rain back down as acid, carving new channels into fresh rock. The atmosphere, oceans, and crust are not separate. They are partners, constantly exchanging matter and energy, driven by heat below. And that heat never stops. You drift now across an entire continent forming from volcanic material. Its bones are granite and basalt. Its breath is ash and gas. Its veins are magma chambers and subduction zones. This is a living body of rock. It doesn't speak, but it moves. It doesn't think, but it remembers. In time, this heat will mellow. The crust will thicken. The interior will cool, slowly, over billions of years. But now, in this billion years ago world, the Earth is young and full of fire. And the fire does not destroy. It creates. The atmosphere begins to change. You drift high now, above the landscape of fire and rust, where gases swirl in layers so ancient they have never been breathed. The sky is still dense, still tinted in gold and copper, but something subtle is happening. A shift, quiet and persistent. You feel it first in the weight of the air. Lighter, not by much, but enough to notice. The thick clouds of methane and carbon dioxide that once wrapped the planet like a fever blanket are thinning, diluted slowly by something new. Oxygen. It is not sudden. It is not loud. It is microbial. Cyanobacteria, those quiet builders of stone and sky, have been releasing oxygen for hundreds of millions of years. At first, the oceans kept it, a gift unclaimed. Iron in the water absorbed every molecule, forming rust, layering the sea floor with red. But now, the iron is running out. There's only so much to bind. And so, oxygen begins to rise. At first, it hovers near the sea surface, forming a tentative breath. Then it escapes into the air, molecule by molecule, slowly rewriting the chemistry of the sky. You drift lower, to feel it. The difference is barely perceptible. But it's there, in how light filters through the clouds, in how ultraviolet radiation begins to break apart. Tiny changes, cascading across ecosystems that do not know they are ecosystems. You pass through an ancient storm. Lightning forks across the sky, igniting chemical reactions in midair. Rain falls, acid-laced, carrying dissolved gases to the land below. It carves the rocks, pulls minerals into streams, and returns them to the sea. The cycle of chemical exchange intensifies, fueled by oxygen's growing presence. But not all life welcomes this. In the deeper oceans, anaerobic microbes begin to die. They cannot tolerate oxygen. To them, it is poison. Whole microbial kingdoms vanish in silence, unable to adapt. The Earth is undergoing what future geologists will call the Great Oxidation Event. But here, now, it is simply a change of air. A change no one breathes yet. You rise into the atmosphere, feeling how its texture shifts. Where once it clung heavy with methane, now it loosens, reforms. Carbon dioxide levels drop. Methane oxidizes into carbon dioxide and water, cooling the planet. The greenhouse blanket begins to fray. And for the first time, the blue of the sky begins to shimmer faintly behind the haze. Not always, not everywhere. But when the volcanic dust settles, when the clouds thin, there it is, that soft scattering of light across oxygen molecules. The first hint of a future sky. You pause there, suspended in the upper air. It's cold, colder than before. Oxygen's rise has begun to tip the planet toward its first deep chill. Some believe this shift in atmosphere helped trigger the first snowball Earth, a planetary freeze that will come much later. But for now, it's a delicate balance. Volcanoes still belch carbon dioxide, resisting the fall in temperature. Microbes still exhale gases into the sea. The atmosphere trembles on a knife's edge, pulled between cooling and combustion. And above it all, the ozone layer begins to form. Not strong, not yet complete, but with every oxygen molecule, there's a chance that three will join to form ozone, O3. These molecules drift higher, absorbing ultraviolet radiation from the sun. They become a shield, invisible but vital. For the first time, the surface of the Earth begins to feel safer. Not safe. There is still no protection from meteors, volcanoes, cosmic rays, but safer. The ultraviolet death that once sterilized the surface every day begins to soften. The possibility of life on land becomes less impossible. You drift back downward, toward the sea. The tide is rising again, sweeping over the stromatolites and the microbial mats. With each wave, oxygen-rich water is pulled inland. With each retreat, more gases are left in the air. The cycle builds. The atmosphere breathes, for the first time, in earnest. You float now across a salt lake, where evaporation concentrates minerals and gases. The air here smells metallic, dry, but also sharp with the scent of oxidation. Rocks stain red at their edges. Crystals grow in strange patterns. Oxygen has begun to leave signatures. The world wears them like new skin. Rocks that were once gray are now orange. Soil begins to form from weathered volcanic ash, laced with oxidized elements. This early soil is thin, barren, but meaningful. It will be the bed from which plants will one day rise. But for now, it is just the memory of lava, washed and winded and broken into dust. Above you, the clouds move differently now. Less methane means fewer thick, heat-trapping clouds. Storms still rage, but some are gentle. Rain still burns, but some falls soft. The sky is less hostile. The air is beginning to whisper a different mood. You float high, once more to see it all. 1 billion years ago, the atmosphere changed, not with fanfare, not with thunder, but with breath. Invisible breath, exhaled by microbes, ignored by the world, and yet strong enough to reshape a planet. The air begins to carry memory of rust, of breath, of life's persistence, and one day of lungs. But for now, it simply shifts, molecule by molecule, toward the sky you've always known, one soft blue at a time. A world without green. You hover above a coastline worn smooth by tides, where the land breathes heat and silence. The continents have grown, the atmosphere is changing, the oceans ripple with oxygen, but something is still missing: color. There is no green here. Not in leaves, not in stems, not in blades of grass. Because there are no plants. You drift over plains of bare rock, gray, brown, sometimes streaked red with oxidation, but never lush. There are no forests, no moss, no trees spreading canopies, no vines clinging to cliffs. The earth, though alive in its depths, wears the surface of a sleeping world. You lower yourself into a dry riverbed, its stones sun-baked and rough. Water once passed here, brief floods from distant rains, carrying minerals, cutting channels. Now, the bed is dry. Cracks form in the mud, wide enough to trap the wind. But even here, there is no trace of vegetation. No roots burrow through the soil, because there is no soil that knows life. This is the era of bare landscapes. Rain falls occasionally, thin, acidic, warm. It strikes the rock and evaporates quickly, leaving behind crystals of salt and dust. Over time, the rock begins to crack, to crumble, but not from biology. From temperature swings, from chemical weathering, from solitude. You rise into the hills. They look like mountains, but they are younger than the bones of today's peaks. Their faces are smooth, not carved by forests or rivers or glacial tongues. They are shaped by wind, not roots. And the wind here is constant. It howls through canyons, lifting sand, erasing footprints that have never been made. You pass over a cliff where basalt columns stand like ancient sentinels. Their sharp edges glisten in the morning haze. No lichens coat them. No fungi split the cracks. Even the microscopic colonizers that now cling to every surface in your world have yet to venture far inland. Because without plants, land is lonely. You move toward a volcanic plateau, still faintly warm from eruptions long past. Pools of water gather in shallow depressions, rimmed with minerals and iron. Here, life is trying. Cyanobacteria and archaea, those champions of persistence, have begun to edge their way onto land. They form crusts, thin microbial skins that bind dust and sediment into something like primitive soil. In some places, they darken the rock with a faint green tinge, only visible from very close. But it is not green as you know it. It is survival, not beauty. These microbial films are the pioneers, the first to challenge the harsh, air-exposed earth. They endure UV light, dehydration, thermal swings. They cluster in the shadows of rocks, in the stillness after rain, and slowly begin to change the surface. But they are small, and the land is vast. You float across a supercontinent, miles and miles of bare ground interrupted only by volcanoes, craters, and the distant shimmer of shallow seas. No valleys are forested. No peaks are snow-capped. No animals crawl. No insects buzz. The land is a stage with only geology and chemistry as actors. And in that emptiness, something remarkable begins. You pass over a basin where silts have collected from floods, rich in minerals. The microbial crusts here are thicker, more complex. Oxygen levels are just high enough to allow new metabolisms. Life is slowly becoming more adaptable. The air is just safe enough for new forms to consider exposure. The light matters. With the ozone layer strengthening high above, ultraviolet radiation begins to weaken. For billions of years, the sun's rays have scorched the land. Now, they soften. The crust of the earth begins to cool, just enough, just slightly, to allow life to dream of land. You drift over one of the first true soil zones, a place where weathered rock and dead microbes mix into something different. It crumbles when wet. It holds water longer. It supports chemistry complex enough for roots, if roots were here to grow. But they're not. Not yet. You float over an ancient coastline, where microbial mats stretch inland. Here, in the splash zone, some life begins to stretch its boundary. It doesn't move, not exactly. It grows outward, slowly, cell by cell, generation by generation. A green stain creeping across basalt. It's not a plant. It's not even multicellular. But it changes the color of the world, just a little. You rise again, this time at dusk. The land glows red and brown under a sky that is trying, softly, to be blue. The moon, smaller than before but still bold, hangs above this empty earth like a witness. The wind carries no pollen. No seeds tumble on the breeze. There is no rustle. Only the hiss of shifting sand and the occasional crack of rock collapsing under its own history. You drift quietly over these landscapes, knowing what they will become. You see the future rivers, the places where roots will someday dig, the valleys that will fill with ferns, with trees, with animals hiding in the underbrush. You see forests waiting beneath stone. You see grass not yet invented, flowers not yet imagined, footsteps never taken. This is a world without green, but not a world without potential. And beneath every rock, beneath every microbial crust, beneath every grain of rusted sand, there is the memory of the ocean, the breath of life, and the slow promise that one day, the land too will bloom. Beneath the waves, where sunlight begins to fail and pressure wraps tightly around every form, cities bloom, cities without towers, without roads, without names. These are the bacterial metropolises of the ancient sea, alive in ways no eye can yet witness. You drift through this world like a ghost through memory. Above, the water still carries the tint of rust. The last of the dissolved iron swirls in soft spirals, but now, there's more clarity. Oxygen is beginning to claim its place in the currents. And with it, complexity stirs. At this depth, around 100 meters down, the surface light is a soft gray shimmer, scattered and diffused. Here, life doesn't rely solely on photosynthesis. It trades in chemistry, energy from reactions, not radiation. The ocean is thick with microbial colonies. You pass through clouds of single-celled organisms, drifting in clusters like planktonic constellations. Some are cyanobacteria, floating freely now, no longer confined to shallow mats. Others are ancient relatives of today's archaea and bacteria, trading electrons in quiet, invisible transactions. This is not chaos. It is organization without architecture. Cells form communities, clumping into colonies that drift together, sharing resources, shielding each other from toxins, sometimes fusing into biofilms. These films are sticky, gelatinous, semi-structured, cloaking surfaces of stone, sediment, and even each other. They are ancient cities, not cities built from intention or design, but from necessity. You sink deeper. Here in the twilight zone of the ocean, oxygen begins to fade again. But instead of emptiness, you find specialization. Microbes evolve to fill niches. Some thrive on sulfur, some on methane, others on hydrogen. They live together, layered like chemical lasagna, each group passing byproducts to the next. It is cooperation before language, trade before commerce. In one pocket of water, you observe a microbial mat growing on a rock face. It shimmers faintly with movement, not motion, but metabolism. Electrons move through the mat like whispers, from one species to another, in a chain of energy flow. Some microbes produce hydrogen sulfide, others consume it. Some fix carbon, others feed on the waste. Each member of the mat has a role, and together, they persist. You drift beside a hydrothermal vent now, one of the great volcanic chimneys that the ocean floor. It belches black clouds rich in minerals, and around it, microbial life explodes in density. These are chemosynthesizers, life forms that feed not on sunlight, but on the Earth's deep breath. They convert hydrogen sulfide into energy, building organic matter in utter darkness. The vent glows faintly with heat. The water here is near boiling, but pressure keeps it from flashing to steam. And still, life thrives. Around the vent, microbial colonies coat the rocks like soft, velvet frost. Some even float in dense plumes, drifting upward in the rising heat. This is an ecosystem with no sun, no day, no sky. And yet it flourishes. You pass through a vast microbial bloom, where bacteria swarm in filaments and chains. Some form long, rope-like structures, anchoring to rocks. Others swim in spirals, using tiny flagella to move toward nutrients. Some are coated in magnetic particles, aligning themselves with the Earth's magnetic field to navigate. Tiny, invisible lives with direction. And among them, a change is beginning. Some of these microbes are becoming more complex. You sense it in their membranes, thicker, folded, structured. Some begin forming internal compartments, separating chemical processes into specialized zones. Others begin to store DNA in more protected ways. A few even begin engulfing other cells, not to digest them, but to keep them. These are the whispers of eukaryotes. Still rare, still fragile, but already rewriting biology. One cell hosts another. One metabolism joins with another. Mitochondria, once free bacteria, begin living inside host cells, trading energy for shelter. These partnerships are the seeds of all multicellular life. You float through one such cell now. It is enormous compared to its bacterial cousins. Inside, energy flows like clockwork. Proteins fold. DNA replicates with precision. It is a new kind of order, a leap from simple reaction to regulated machinery. This cell will not build a fish, or a fern, or a fungus. Not yet. But it holds the blueprint. And around it, the microbial city adapts. Some compete. Some cooperate. Evolution has no favorites. Only success. Only continuity. You drift again, away from the vent, back toward the open sea. In the mid-depths, planktonic mats float in translucent sheets. They catch light when they can, feed on molecules when they can't. They are moved by currents, torn apart, regrown. Every day, they bloom and die in cycles that affect the chemistry of the entire ocean. Every molecule they release becomes part of the Earth's transformation. As oxygen increases, the balance of life shifts. Some anaerobes flee to the deepest trenches, to sediments where oxygen never reaches. Others die out. But the eukaryotes and the oxygen-tolerant bacteria begin to fill the vacuum. And so the sea changes. Not in color yet, but in capacity. It becomes not just a container of life, but a cradle of complexity. Every depth has its own biochemistry. Every layer, its own citizens. There is still no predator, no eye, no memory, but already the machinery of future ecosystems hums below the waves. You rise slowly now, through the water column, watching the microbial cities shimmer in your wake. They are invisible to the eye, but they run the world. Glaciers at the equator. You drift across the curve of the Earth, and what you see is not what you expect. This should be the tropics, warm, volcanic, brimming with shallow seas and microbial reefs. But instead, the surface below you is white. The equator is frozen. You pass over a vast, silent plain of ice, stretching from horizon to horizon. Snow covers the land like ash from some ancient dream. The oceans have retreated beneath a crust of frost, and where there was once tide and current and breath, there is only stillness. This is one of Earth's strangest stories, Snowball Earth. It's not permanent. It's not the end. But for millions of years, this planet, hot in its birth, molten in its youth, slips into an icy coma. Even the equator is buried under glaciers several kilometers thick. Even the seas are capped with ice. And still, below, the Earth moves. You descend now, through the white, through time. 1 billion years ago, conditions on Earth fluctuated wildly. As oxygen increased and greenhouse gases like methane were scrubbed from the sky, the atmosphere lost some of its heat-trapping ability. The climate began to cool. And then, something tipped. Perhaps a supercontinent drifted toward the equator, increasing weathering and pulling carbon dioxide from the air. Perhaps sunlight dropped just slightly due to the sun's young age. Whatever the cause, the result was a runaway freeze. You drift above frozen oceans, their surfaces cracked with pressure ridges, dusted in volcanic ash. The ice reflects sunlight back into space, compounding the cold. Temperatures plummet. Whole oceans freeze over. Winds slow. Weather collapses into quiet patterns. The world has entered a state of deep time stillness. And yet, it is not dead. Beneath the ice, in cracks and vents and brine channels, life continues. You descend below the sea ice, through a crack where thermal energy still escapes from hydrothermal vents. It is dark here, but warm. The ocean is not frozen solid, just sealed in. Microbial life clings to rocks, thrives near volcanic warmth, and continues the work it began long before the freeze. Cyanobacteria still drift in pockets of open water beneath the ice, forming colonies in the faint light that filters through. Some have adapted to the dark. Others hibernate in suspended states, waiting for warmth. Life is patient, and in this frozen world, it changes. You float into an under-ice lake, sealed from the sky, fed by geothermal heat. It is rich in dissolved gases, thick with microbial blooms that never see the sun. Here, evolution continues its slow whisper. New forms emerge. Some begin using sulfur, others carbon dioxide, others trace metals. The Great Freeze is not a silence. It is a low hum, deep and unrelenting. You rise again, back through the ice, into a world wrapped in glacial stillness. The continents are covered in white. Mountains poke through the ice like the spines of buried beasts. Winds carry snow that never melts. Rivers have vanished. Oceans sleep beneath a frozen sky. But the volcanoes do not sleep. You pass over one now, glowing faintly beneath its burden of ice. It erupts through the glacier in a sudden burst, sending plumes of ash into the air. These eruptions are rare, but they matter. Each one releases carbon dioxide, building it back into the atmosphere molecule by molecule. Over time, these emissions begin to tilt the balance again. Greenhouse gases slowly accumulate. The atmosphere warms. The ice begins to thin. And one day, not today, not even this millennium, the world will melt. When it does, it will be sudden. A greenhouse runaway in reverse, from snowball to steam. The ice will retreat rapidly, exposing dark ocean water that absorbs heat. The Earth will awaken with floods, rains, erosion on a planetary scale. Whole land masses will be reshaped. But now, here in the stillness, you drift over a planet paused. You move over glacial shelves that extend hundreds of kilometers out to sea. Beneath them, the ocean currents stir faintly, driven by temperature and salinity differences. Even these subtle movements keep Earth's systems alive. And you sense it. Beneath the white, beneath the silence, motion continues. Plate tectonics has not stopped. Volcanoes still breathe. The moon still pulls the tides beneath the ice. Evolution creeps forward in the shadows. You float near the terminator line, where day becomes night. There is no warmth here, only the thin, scattered glow of sunlight reflecting off endless snow. The sky is pale and quiet. The stars are visible even during the day. The moon glows like a cold guardian above the frost. And across this glacial earth, you feel something strange, a kind of peace. There is no conflict, no sound, no violence. The world has slowed, not died. It is hibernating, dreaming, waiting for the crust to crack, for the gases to build, for the heat to return, waiting for green. Because beneath this cold skin, the planet remembers warmth, remembers rust and lava and the breath of microbes, remembers a time before the freeze and dreams of a time after. And when it thaws, life will not start again. It will simply continue. The quiet dance of tectonic plates. You drift now beneath the frozen crust, below the silence of glaciers and the forgotten rhythm of tides, into the Earth's deep architecture. Here, away from the chill of the surface, the planet is still moving. Slowly, ceaselessly, tectonic plates, vast slabs of rock tens of kilometers thick, slide past each other, crash together, pull apart. Not in hours, not in days, but across eons. You do not feel motion. You feel intention, written into the rock like breath into lungs. You hover along a mid-ocean ridge, a seam where two plates are drifting apart. From the crack between them, magma rises, hot and buoyant. It cools quickly on contact with seawater, forming new crust. This is how the ocean floor is born, not in chaos, but in rhythm, new stone forming every moment. You pass over one such seam, fresh rock glowing faintly from geothermal heat. The plates drift apart at centimeters per year, but the effect, over time, is the sculpting of continents. You drift down into the Rift Valley, a split in the seafloor where the crust stretches and tears. Here, hydrothermal vents the floor like chimneys, exhaling minerals and warmth. Even now, life gathers. In the dark, in the deep, you drift along this seam like a whisper moving through the Earth's own backbone. The ridge stretches thousands of kilometers, encircling the globe in a silent, molten belt. This is one half of the tectonic equation, creation. Now you move to the other half, destruction, where plates collide, One dives beneath the other in a process known as subduction. You hover above a subduction zone, dark, immense, and slow. One slab of ocean crust, dense and heavy, sinks into the mantle. It bends as it descends, fracturing, heating, melting. You follow it down. There is no scream, no fireball, just pressure and heat, and the slow metamorphosis of stone into magma. The descending plate pulls water and sediment with it. These elements fuel volcanic arcs on the surface above, chains of volcanoes like those in the modern Pacific Ring of Fire. Eruptions here will eventually vent gases into the atmosphere, shape continents, and, one day, influence weather and life. You float between the two plates, one being born, one being destroyed. You feel the symmetry. The Earth is not static. It is a cycle, alive in motion. You pass now over a continental collision zone, where two plates have met and neither yields. They crumple upward, thickening the crust. This is how mountains begin. You feel the tension rising, literal tension in the rock, in the crust, in the fabric of geography. You rise through this thickened land and imagine what will someday become the spine of great mountain ranges. But for now, it is just pressure and uplift. No peaks yet, only roots forming underground. You drift farther, over fault lines, places where plates slide past each other. The movement is subtle, friction high. These are places of strain, where the Earth stores energy over centuries and releases it in sudden, jolting pulses, earthquakes. You watch as a fault slips, not today, but in the deep history to come. Rocks grind, then jump. The Earth shudders. But even that violence is part of the slow choreography, because nothing here is random. Everything moves according to the heat below. That heat drives mantle convection, which in turn moves the plates above. Hot rock rises, cool rock sinks. You pass through one of these deep cells, a loop of molten stone moving like oil in a pan, but across millions of years. It is beautiful. It is inevitable. This is the dance the Earth cannot stop. You return to the surface now, to a supercontinent forming. Cratons, the ancient cores of continents, collide and stitch themselves together, pulled by plate motion. Mountains begin to swell. Inland seas open and close. Chains of islands arc toward land masses. It's like watching the planet fold and unfold itself, again and again. You see fault scars etched into rock, rifts that never fully healed, arcs where magma once poured. The continents bear memory of every step of the dance. And even now, even here, tectonics drives more than just land. It drives climate. The position of continents alters ocean currents. Volcanic outgassing changes the composition of the atmosphere. Subduction removes carbon from the surface and buries it deep. You realize then, tectonics does not just move rock. It moves time. It sets the pace for ice ages and greenhouse periods. It creates habitats and erases them. It writes opportunity into the landscape and then rewrites it. And beneath it all, beneath every mountain, every ridge, every trench, you feel the hum of the Earth's engine, steady as a sleeping heart. You rise again, drifting above the planet now, watching the continents inch and sway. The crust is young. The land is raw. But it is moving, always moving. The Earth is not finished. It never will be. Volcanoes as planetary architects. You hover over a coastline shaped not by rivers or ice, but by fire, a terrain carved from eruptions, lava deltas, and smoldering calderas. 1 billion years ago, the Earth is not only alive beneath its crust, it is designing the very canvas of continents with every burst of molten rock. You float toward a shield volcano in mid-eruption. Its slopes are broad and low, not steep like modern stratovolcanoes. From its central vent, lava flows in steady waves, not explosions. It glows a dull orange in the cooling dusk, and the air hums with heat. There are no trees here to burn, no animals to flee, only the slow spread of creation. This volcano is not destructive. It is constructive. You drift alongside the lava flow as it creeps outward, widening the coastline. Every meter it cools and hardens adds new land. Rock pulled from Earth's depths and offered to the surface. In a few days, it will blacken. In a few decades, crack. In a few thousand years, it might host life. Volcanoes are not only agents of violence, they are agents of delivery. They bring forth water vapor, which will condense into rain, carbon dioxide, which regulates climate across eons, sulfur and methane, which shape chemistry, and most importantly, minerals, the raw ingredients of biology. You drift above an ancient volcanic island, freshly formed. Its surface is slick, raw, jagged in places where lava cooled too quickly. Ash coats its summit like powdered charcoal. Rain falls lightly, and steam hisses from the still warm ground. The rain carries elements down the slope: phosphorus, potassium, magnesium, dissolving them into rivulets that feed into the sea. These nutrients fertilize the water, feeding microbial blooms, stirring the food web before there is a food chain. The volcano feeds the sea, and it feeds the sky. You ascend through the volcanic plume, where gases vent into the atmosphere. Sulfur dioxide forms aerosols, cooling the Earth's surface by reflecting sunlight. Carbon dioxide builds in the air, warming it. Volcanism is a planetary thermostat, erratic, imprecise, but powerful. Too much eruption, and sunlight dims. Too little, and the Earth may cool into permanent snow. You feel the balance in the upper winds, how each eruption alters temperature, rainfall, ocean circulation. The planet doesn't respond in minutes. It responds in millions of years. Now you pass into a caldera, a collapsed crater left behind when a massive eruption emptied the magma chamber below. It is vast, kilometers wide, silent now. Rain has filled it with water, creating a hot, acidic lake. Steam rises gently from its surface. Beneath the water, microbial life thrives on dissolved minerals and heat. Calderas like this that the supercontinent, scars of past creation. Some will never erupt again. Others will refill with magma and explode once more. These cycles shape where continents grow, how rivers flow, and what species will one day walk these valleys. Because every mountain, every canyon, every volcanic plain is a decision the Earth makes through eruption. You drift now over a chain of island arcs, curved strings of volcanoes formed above subduction zones. Ocean crust dives below ocean crust, melts, and rises again as magma. The resulting islands are small, steep, and closely packed. Each one is a volcano. Each one adds another stone to the future mosaic of land. Some will collide with continents. Some will sink. Some will fuse together into larger land masses, becoming the seeds of modern geography. You glide over one such arc as it grows. Ash clouds trail from multiple peaks. Lava spills into the sea, where it cools with explosive violence, creating black sand and new beaches. Life will reach these shores eventually. But for now, the volcano builds in solitude. Volcanoes shape more than rock, they shape possibility. By building land, they create dry surfaces for life to eventually colonize. By emitting gases, they enable weather and climate. By delivering minerals, they fertilize oceans and lakes. And by triggering extinction events, yes, even that, they clear the stage for new forms to emerge. You rise once more into the upper atmosphere, looking down on the planet. Volcanoes erupt across every continent, from mid-ocean ridges to island arcs to inland flood basalts. Some are slow and steady, others are sudden and massive. Together, they are the sculptors of Earth's surface, and they leave clues behind. Layers of ash, preserved in sediment. Pillows of lava, frozen mid-ocean. Crystals of zircon, time-locked with radioactive clocks. All of these will one day be read like scripture by geologists, each eruption a verse in Earth's long autobiography. But here, now, you are the only witness. You drift through the smoke, through the scent of sulfur and stone, and you feel the Earth exhale. Through fire, it remakes itself. Not once, but always. Magnetic reversals and wandering poles. You rise now into the high atmosphere, beyond the clouds and ash, beyond the shimmer of ozone and the arc of blue light, where something stranger and quieter is always at work. The planet's magnetic field, humming invisibly like a protective spell. You drift above the Earth, watching charged solar particles scatter away from the magnetic shield, deflected like raindrops hitting glass. But beneath you, far below, this shield is not fixed. It sways. It flips. It forgets where north is, then remembers, differently. Because a billion years ago, even magnetism was unstable. The Earth's magnetic field is born from motion deep within the outer core, where molten iron and nickel swirl in convective loops. These movements generate electric currents. The currents generate the field. A planetary dynamo running in silence. But dynamos stutter. Every few 100,000 years, or sometimes longer, sometimes shorter, the field reverses. North becomes south. Compass needles, if they existed, would spin with confusion. You pass through one of these reversals now, not as a sudden flip, but as a slow unraveling. The poles begin to wander, first by miles, then by hundreds of miles. Magnetic north drifts across ancient continents, erratic and uncertain. The field weakens. Solar radiation begins to seep closer to the surface. The planet, for a time, becomes more vulnerable. But life does not notice. There are no creatures to navigate by pole, no birds to lose their direction, no compasses to fail, only microbes, tides, and stone, each of which continues as if nothing has changed. But the rock remembers. You drift downward now, to the ocean floor, where lava cools at mid-ocean ridges. As it solidifies, iron-rich minerals inside the basalt align themselves to the direction of the magnetic field. They freeze that alignment forever, like compass needles set in stone. Layer upon layer of this magnetic memory builds over millions of years. When scientists in the distant future will scan these ridges, they'll find zebra-striped patterns, alternating bands of normal and reversed polarity. A barcode of time. This is Earth's forgotten script, written not in language, but in magnetism. You pass over ancient cratons now, stabilized pieces of continental crust. And even here, the magnetism is locked in minerals. Tiny grains of magnetite inside billion-year-old rocks point to where the magnetic pole once was, long before any map, long before any thought of north or south. And those rocks tell a stranger story. The poles didn't just flip. They moved. Continents wander because of plate tectonics. Yes, but the magnetic poles themselves also wander, tracing chaotic paths across the globe. Sometimes they circle slowly. Sometimes they surge rapidly across hemispheres. And sometimes they vanish altogether. During a full reversal, the field weakens to a fraction of its strength. You drift through one such moment now, where the field has all but collapsed. Solar radiation begins to penetrate deeper into the atmosphere. Auroras spread far from the poles, shimmering over equatorial skies. It's beautiful, and also dangerous. The field is Earth's shield against cosmic weather. Without it, the atmosphere would slowly be stripped away by solar wind, like what happened on Mars. But Earth is lucky. The field reestablishes itself after each reversal, often stronger than before. You pass into the outer core now, not physically, but perceptually. You sense the vastness of liquid metal churning beneath thousands of kilometers of stone. Convection cells twist and rise, generating the invisible lines of force that stretch outward from the planet like glowing threads. The magnetic field is not stable, but it is persistent, and it shapes more than compass directions. It influences tectonic movement, mantle dynamics, and even the behavior of life. Some bacteria, even now, align themselves to magnetic fields, using them to move through sediment. They have magnetosomes, tiny internal compasses that guide them in darkness. A billion years ago, such microbes already exist. You drift into the seafloor mud, where bacteria swim upward, aligning to the weak magnetic field. They search for just the right oxygen levels. They have no eyes, no ears, only an internal sense of direction, borrowed from the planet itself. Even without knowing, they trust the field. And you wonder, as you drift upward again, how much of life has always been guided by things it cannot see. You pass into the atmosphere again, watching charged particles spiral along magnetic lines toward the poles. The auroras are faint but present, ghost light flickering across snow-covered land. Colors ripple across the night sky, soft greens and violets dancing in silence. No one watches, but the sky performs anyway. The poles continue their dance, never still. The field continues to twist, reverse, and rebuild. And the rock below continues to record every step. You float between past and future, between one polarity and the next, and realize even the invisible on Earth is alive with rhythm. Even the unseen leaves a trail. The planets pulse, earthquakes and pressure. You drift down now into silence, into tension, into the places where the crust holds its breath. There is no motion, not yet, only the weight of waiting. The rocks beneath you are quiet, but not calm. They are folded, pressed, stretched, and stressed by forces older than mountain ranges, deeper than oceans. This is the world of earthquakes, before buildings to fall or lives to shake. 1 billion years ago, Earth's surface already cracks and grinds under its own shifting skin. And you're here, not to hear the noise, but to feel the pressure that builds before the sound. You hover over a long fault line, where two plates are pushing against each other. For centuries, they've been locked. The crust resists. It bends. Minute by minute, millimeter by millimeter, it stores energy like a bowstring drawn too far. And then, release. You feel it more than hear it. The rupture travels through the rock like a lightning thought, sudden and unstoppable. The ground lurches, shifts, then settles. The land splits by a meter, then sighs back into stillness. No dust, no collapse, only rearrangement. Earthquakes were not invented for us. They are the sound of a planet adjusting its limbs. You drift down through the fault scar, into the cracked stone. Veins of quartz glint where fluids once surged during quakes. The pressure here reaches deep into the crust, kilometers down, where rocks behave more like clay, folding rather than snapping. These are the ductile zones, the deeper theater of the planet's tectonic ballet. You feel ancient forces at work: compression, extension, shearing. They do not scream, but they leave behind records, foliations, warped crystals, crushed minerals that whisper stories to future geologists. Back above ground, you glide over a landscape reshaped by seismic memory. Ridges have risen, basins have formed, valleys have sunk. These movements happen slowly across geologic time, and also instantly in the quake. You feel the paradox. Earth moves both imperceptibly and all at once. And the pressure keeps returning. The plates never stop. You pass into a continental interior, far from the edges where plates collide, and still you feel it, strain. Even here, the land is not safe. Cratons, the stable cores of continents, grown with the inherited stresses of billions of years. Ancient faults reawaken. Buried energy reemerges. You drift into one of these ancient faults, a fracture zone formed perhaps when continents first collided. It is filled with shattered rock, called fault gouge, soft and slippery under pressure. These zones act like scars. They remember old injuries and become sites for new ones. You realize then, the crust is never fully healed. You follow a tremor backward in time, tracing its cause. The slow drag of one tectonic plate moving past another, grinding grain against grain. Friction builds. Heat rises. Microcracks form. Then, with one final push, the friction fails. The quake releases. It is not one motion. It is thousands of fractures echoing outward, each one cascading into the next, like a yawn that travels through stone. The ocean floor trembles too. You drift to a mid-ocean ridge, where the seafloor spreads. Sometimes, the spreading slips. Earthquakes echo through the deep, sending pressure waves, P waves, racing ahead, followed by slower but stronger S waves. You feel them ripple through the earth like a low heartbeat. If you had skin, it would shiver. If you had breath, it would pause. You move now across a strike-slip fault, where land masses move side by side. They are not smashing, not diverging, just sliding, like pages in a book that don't quite align. This too generates quakes. Each shift is a correction. Each correction, a scar. The earth is always adjusting itself. Not perfectly, not gently, but with purpose. And still, life continues. Even a billion years ago, microbial mats reattach after the tide returns. Subsurface bacteria recolonize the rock minutes after it shifts. In deep fractures, extremophiles thrive in newly opened pores, feeding on gases released by broken minerals. They survive the shake. Some even depend on it. You pass now through one of these fracture networks, a deep vein of open rock, filled with mineral-rich water. Here, hydrogen and methane bubble upward from reactions between water and newly exposed olivine. These gases feed chemolithotrophs, microbes that eat stone for a living. Earthquakes, for them, are opportunities. The breaking of stone creates food. You rise again, into the upper crust, above a fault system that won't erupt for another million years. But already the pressure builds. Already the rock groans. You sense it waiting, the readiness of rupture. And as you float over the planet's surface, watching ridges rise, valleys deepen, and faults inch forward, you understand. Earthquakes are not interruptions. They are part of the pulse. Like a muscle stretching, like a breath being taken. The crust is not a shell. It is skin. And beneath it, the planet flexes in slow, thunderless motion. The first shadows of eukaryotes. You drift now into warm, shallow waters, where sunlight filters through waves like golden dust, and life begins to rearrange itself, not by chance, but by ambition. For billions of years, life on Earth has been simple. Cells without compartments, floating, dividing, surviving. Prokaryotes, bacteria, archaea. But something is changing, something internal. You enter one such cell, floating in the sea among countless others. At first, it looks the same, round, soft, alive. But inside, a drama is unfolding. The internal space has structure now. Membranes fold inward. Enzymes are sorted. Reactions are partitioned. This cell is beginning to organize itself. You are witnessing the birth of complexity. These are the earliest eukaryotic cells. Life forms that contain not just molecules, but rooms. You float through the interior of one. There's a central compartment where DNA coils tightly inside a membrane, the beginning of the nucleus. Around it, small organelles churn. Some process energy, others manage proteins, still others store waste. This is no longer a soup. It is a city, a quiet, internal revolution. And how did it begin? You pass into the fossil of a theory. Long ago, a larger cell engulfed a smaller one, not to consume it, but to keep it. A merger, not a meal. That smaller cell, once independent, now lives inside its host, supplying energy in exchange for safety. Over time, it becomes mitochondria, the powerhouse of the cell. This event, endosymbiosis, changes everything. You glide through the mitochondrial membranes now, where reactions occur with mechanical precision. These tiny structures turn food into energy with remarkable efficiency. They have their own DNA, their own ancestry, their own agenda, and yet they are family now. This partnership allows eukaryotes to grow bigger, to store more information, to evolve faster. To experiment, you rise into the open water again, watching these early eukaryotes drift among their prokaryotic cousins. Most of the ocean is still bacterial, still simple. But the eukaryotes are different. Some grow long projections, flagella, to swim. Others begin forming stiff walls or internal scaffolds. They move with purpose. They react with speed. Some even begin to form colonies, groups of cells cooperating, staying close, sharing nutrients. It's not yet a multicellular organism, but it's close. You float between a small chain of cells communicating through chemical pulses, acting as one. Coordination, born from connection. And the DNA inside these cells? More abundant, more flexible. Eukaryotic DNA is housed in chromosomes, coiled and protected. It mutates, recombines, and adapts more freely. Each change opens a new possibility. Each possibility opens a future. You pass through a bloom now. Millions of eukaryotic plankton drifting together in warm, nutrient-rich water. They capture sunlight more efficiently. They outcompete some bacteria. The balance of power begins to shift. The ocean is changing, not in temperature, not in chemistry, but but in intelligence, not of thought, but of form. These cells can sense gradients. They can respond to light. They can choose direction. Some begin to engulf prey, pulling smaller cells into themselves and digesting them. These are the beginnings of predation, of interaction beyond passive absorption. Life is no longer just about surviving the environment. It's about navigating it. You float near one such predator, a single-celled eukaryote with a flexible membrane. It senses a chemical trail, swims toward it, engulfs a bacterium, and digests it. All in silence. All in seconds. There are no eyes here. No hunger as you know it. Only action. Only agency. And below, near the seafloor, some eukaryotes settle onto surfaces, growing flat, forming sheets. Others attach to rocks, stretch into threads, begin to specialize. Multicellularity is beginning, not fully, not universally, but undeniably. The step from cell to organism is underway. You descend into the mud, where fossil impressions will one day preserve these transitions. Slime molds, algal films, thread-like fossils. The record is faint, but it is real. The earth is preparing to imagine form. You rise once more, over shallows lit by moonlight, and feel the magnitude of what is beginning. Before now, life existed. Now, it evolves with new tools. With mitochondria, with nuclei, with structure. With inheritance, not just of genes, but of complex strategies. These early eukaryotes will go on to give rise to plants, animals, fungi. Every tree, every whale, every human heartbeat begins here. In these drifting cells, silent architects of biology. And yet they make no sound. They are not aware of what they are doing. But you, the ghost, the observer, you see it. Life rewriting itself from the inside. You pass through a cluster of these cells, glowing faintly under the light filtering from above. They spin, they divide, they drift apart. And in their wake, they leave a new chapter of Earth. Not louder, just deeper. A world of silence and movement. You drift now across a billion-year-old Earth wrapped in contradiction. Motion without noise. Life without footsteps. Rhythm without sound. There are no voices here. No birds. No breeze. No leaves to rustle. But the planet is never still. Everywhere you go, something moves. You pass over a vast plain of bare stone, its surface cracked by thermal breath, fractured by tectonic whisper. A dustless wind brushes nothing. There are no trees to sway, no grasses to bend. But below, deep within the crust, plates glide over the mantle like slow dancers on a floor of fire. It is a silent choreography. You rise above the sea now, once red, now darkening blue, and still stirred by unseen forces. The tides continue their daily march, pulled by the moon, drawn across continents like soft ribbons of motion. Waves form without crash. Currents twist without sound. In the silence, the planet pulses. You hover above an inland lake, shallow, mirror-like. Microbial mats line its floor, growing in rings, responding to the light. The sun sets, and with it, life shifts. Some microbes rest. Others awaken. The lake breathes in chemical cycles, unseen and unfelt by any creature, yet utterly real. The silence is not emptiness. It is intention, hushed and ancient. You descend into the water, where movement becomes more elaborate. Eukaryotic cells drift with flagella trailing like threads of purpose. They spin, tumble, gather. Some engulf. Others photosynthesize. A few drift together, beginning to stick, to signal, to specialize. Multicellularity flirts with biology. No eye watches it happen. But the Earth watches everything. You float through an undersea current now, cold, nutrient-rich, gliding from the deep toward the surface. These upwellings carry the minerals of volcanoes and the legacy of dead organisms into the light. Blooms form. Ecosystems awaken. Life organizes. The current is not loud, but it feeds the world. You pass over a tectonic fault where the crust slips almost imperceptibly. Rock scrapes rock. The motion measured in millimeters per year. But here, that's enough to build mountains, to open oceans, to remake the surface of the Earth. It is glacial ballet, not because of ice, but because of tempo. The world moves in scales you cannot count, and yet never stops. And in this slow movement, evolution thrives. Cells that reproduce slightly faster edge out slower ones. Enzymes that work a little more efficiently become the foundation of complexity. Over millions of years, tiny advantages become revolutions. You hover near a hydrothermal vent, where water explodes into darkness, superheated and rich with chemistry. Life here is not just moving, it is thriving. Colonies build, populations boom and collapse. Genes pass and change. There is drama, but no noise. Only transformation. You drift now into the clouds, thin, high, windswept. They race across the sky at speeds the surface never feels. You follow one across half a continent, and below it, you watch storms gather, disperse, and reform. The air is dynamic, the sky alive, and yet, all you hear is stillness. Above, the moon continues its retreat. Earth continues its spin, slower now. Days lengthen. Tides lose a little force. The axis wobbles slightly, enough to nudge climates, to alter where rains fall, to shift the course of rivers not yet born. You see it all as a ghost floating through a clock that no longer ticks, because there is no ticking. There is only drift. And across this drifting planet, life has found momentum. Not just in genes or membranes, but in systems. Microbial mats now cycle nutrients vertically, from top layer to bottom. Algal blooms follow the sun. Predator cells hunt with intent. Life has become aware of its environment, not through thoughts, but through response. And response is the first echo of consciousness. You pass over a shallow archipelago, where volcanic islands rise and fall like slow exhalations. Around them, microbes collect in different niches. Some specialize in light, others in sulfur, still others in heat. And here, in this variation, diversity explodes. The land is still bare. The air is still sharp. But under the sea, life is composing a symphony in silence. The instruments are enzymes. The melody is mutation. The rhythm is generation after generation. And you, the observer, hear it all as movement. You rise now, higher than ever, above the atmosphere, where the planet curls below you, familiar, but not. No continents as you know them. No forests. No ice caps. But everything becoming. You see the blue deepening in the oceans. The white patchwork of volcanoes. The dim shimmer of auroras dancing near the poles. And all of it is in motion. The earth is a body without rest. A breathing thing with no lungs. A storyteller with no mouth. But its message is clear. Even in silence, there is purpose. Even in stillness, there is direction. Even without footsteps, the journey is real. Time sleeps inside the rock. You drift now across the quietest stretch of the journey. Not a continent, not an ocean, but something deeper, memory held in stone. There are no cities yet. No fossils shaped like hands. No ancestors to remember this place. And yet, memory exists. It's etched into the crust, layered into minerals, locked inside isotopes. The Earth has been recording since before it had listeners. You pass over a mountain, not towering but ancient, worn down by time, sculpted by wind and chemistry. The grains of sand at its base were once magma. The elements within them remember pressure, heat, collisions. They remember which way the magnetic pole pointed. They remember which gases filled the sky. You drift lower and touch the surface of a rock. It feels heavy, not with mass, but with meaning. Each atom vibrates with 1 billion years of silence. Each crystal formation is a record of temperature and pressure, of how deep it once sat beneath the crust, of how long it waited to be seen. This is where time lives now. Not in clocks, not in calendars, but in zircon grains, tinier than dust, older than mountains, unshattered even by tectonic violence. Some of them, still hiding in the cratons, are over 4 billion years old. Older than the moon's scars. Older than Earth's oceans. Older than your ghostly self. You hover beside one now. It doesn't move, but it has survived everything. Volcanoes, glaciers, reversals, extinctions. It simply remained. Time is not loud. It does not rush. It sinks. It burrows into rock. It settles into crystals. It waits. You pass into a deep cave beneath the crust, untouched by light. Here, water trickles slowly across stone, carving it grain by grain. Each drop takes centuries to leave a mark, but it leaves one. Over millions of years, this cave will expand. Not by explosion, by persistence. The earth builds nothing in haste. You float higher now, above a continent that has drifted far from where it began. Its mountains are rearranged, its coasts reshaped, its chemistry altered. But inside, beneath the outer surface, it still holds the scars and stories of its earliest self. The rocks don't speak, but they remember everything. You feel the pull of stillness now, not as absence, but as invitation. The earth is not calling you forward anymore. It is calling you inward. And so, as the night deepens, as the last auroras shimmer out of view, as the wind stills and the tides slow, you settle. Not into sleep, but into a kind of understanding. That 1 billion years ago, this world had no need for names or narration. It only needed time. Time to cool. Time to rise. Time to crack. To erupt. To spin. To pause. Time to breathe its first air. Time to hold its first light. Time to become the only place like it we know. And it did. You close your eyes, not because you are tired, but because you understand. The earth was never empty. It was always becoming. Even now, it is still becoming. And so are you. Now, drift deeper. Let the rhythm of the tides rock you gently. Let the hum of the mantle wrap around you. Let the silence of the stones hold you still. Let time stop. Not because it ends, but because, for now, you no longer need it.